Sonia Nangloi, a quiet college student, Irfan Veyra, her secret and obsessive boyfriend, Ritika Deshmukh, the worried best friend, Inspector Karan Malhotra, the determined investigator, and Maya Rauth, the neighbor who saw too much together. Their lives collided in a horrifying tale of love, secrecy, and obsession that ended in one of the most disturbing cases Nangloi had ever seen. Sonia Nangloi's life looked simple from the outside, but the truth beneath the surface was far darker than anyone imagined. She was a 20-year-old college student, known by neighbors for being studious, polite, and almost invisible in the noisy lanes of Nangloi. Her family lived modestly, and she never attracted much attention. To her classmates she was quiet, reserved, and always focused on her work. Teachers described her as the type of student who stayed away from drama and gossip. Yet behind the calm surface, Sonia had been keeping a dangerous secret for months, a secret that would ultimately seal her fate. That secret was a man named Irfan Veyra. Unlike the other young men Sonia had known, Irfan was older, mysterious, and carried himself in a way that unsettled those who saw him. He rarely spoke to anyone, never showed up in social spaces, and had an aura of someone who lived on the edge of shadows. Sonia had met him by chance when she was coming home from college one evening. At first, he had seemed protective and caring, but soon his presence became all-consuming. Their relationship grew in secrecy, hidden from her family, hidden even from her closest friend. Sonia's meetings with Irfan followed a strange pattern. They never met in daylight near crowded markets or popular cafes like other couples her age. Instead, Irfan demanded secrecy. Their meetings would happen late in the evening, on deserted roads, or in isolated corners of the city. He always warned her never to tell anyone about him, convincing her that people would not understand their love. Sonia, young and vulnerable, accepted his conditions, unaware that this secrecy was part of a darker plan. Irfan never visited her home. He never allowed her to take pictures with him, never gave her details about his family or his past. Sonia only knew what little he chose to reveal, and even that was vague. He worked odd jobs, lived alone, and avoided questions about his life. Yet, despite his silence, Sonia found herself drawn deeper into his world. For her, Irfan was not just a boyfriend. He was an escape from the monotony of her life. He made her feel special, but his love came with invisible chains. Slowly, Sonia began to change. She no longer spent evenings with her friends. She stopped sharing details of her life with Ritika, her best friend since childhood. Even her parents noticed that she had grown more secretive, returning home late with excuses that never sounded convincing. The more Irfan demanded, the more Sonia withdrew from the people who loved her. In her heart, Sonia often felt uneasy. There were moments when Irfan's gaze frightened her, when his grip on her arm left marks, when his silence turned into sudden fits of anger. Yet, whenever she thought about leaving him, he would remind her that she belonged to him, and that no one else could ever love her the way he did. Sonia told herself that his strange behavior was only a sign of his deep affection, but deep down, she felt trapped. The secrecy surrounding Irfan began to grow heavier with time. Rumors started to spread in her neighborhood and college. Some classmates claimed that Sonia had a Bhoot boyfriend, because no one ever saw him clearly. They laughed about how he was like a ghost, always hidden, always lurking out of sight. But the truth behind the nickname was far more sinister than gossip. Irfan's absence from the public eye was not accidental, it was deliberate. He lived in the shadows because his past was something he could never allow to be exposed. Every choice Sonia made, every step she took toward Irfan, was pulling her deeper into a trap that no one else could see. What looked like romance from the outside was in reality a cage being built around her, piece by piece. She had no idea that her carefully hidden secret would soon unravel, exposing not just a forbidden love story but a horrifying tale of obsession, violence and death. Ritika Deshmukh had known Sonia since childhood. They grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same schools, and even sat next to each other in college lectures. Ritika could sense when something was wrong with her friend, and lately, she noticed troubling changes. Sonia no longer laughed the way she used to. Her eyes seemed heavy, as though she carried secrets that weighed her down. Sometimes she arrived late to class with her clothes slightly disheveled, her wrists marked with faint bruises she tried to cover with bangles. When Ritika asked about them, Sonia brushed it off, claiming she was careless and clumsy, but Ritika was not convinced. The changes in Sonia grew more visible as weeks passed. She stopped eating lunch with her usual group, choosing instead to sit alone, staring at her phone, typing furiously, and then quickly locking the screen whenever someone passed by. She avoided sleepovers at Ritika's house, something she once enjoyed every weekend. Even her style of dressing shifted. She wore long sleeves even in the summer, as if she had something to hide. Ritika, though hurt by the growing distance, could not shake off the feeling that Sonia was living in fear. It wasn't just Ritika who noticed. A few classmates whispered about Sonia's strange behavior. One girl claimed she saw Sonia standing at the back gate of the college late one evening, speaking in hushed tones to a man who looked older than her. Another said she once saw Sonia crying near the library, only to be pulled away by the same man before anyone could ask what happened. The gossip grew, and slowly the name Bhoot Boyfriend started circulating. People joked that Sonia was dating someone invisible, someone who controlled her like a spirit nobody else could see. What was meant as a joke carried an uncomfortable edge of truth. Ritika's concern deepened when she tried to follow Sonia one afternoon after class. Sonia walked quickly, looking over her shoulder as if making sure no one followed her. Ritika stayed at a distance, careful not to be noticed. Sonia finally reached a narrow alley, far from the busy main roads, where a man waited. Ritika saw him clearly for the first time. He was tall and lean, with sharp features and an unsettling stillness about him. His eyes darted around suspiciously before locking onto Sonia. Without hesitation, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her close. Even from afar, Ritika could see the fear flicker in Sonia's face. That night Ritika couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the image in her mind. There was something wrong about the man, something that felt dangerous. Sonia had always been private, but this secrecy was different. Ritika debated whether to confront her, but Sonia's growing silence suggested she wouldn't confess easily. It was as though Sonia was trapped in a world she couldn't escape. A world built by this mysterious man. Sonia's family, too, noticed unsettling changes. Her mother would sometimes hear her whispering on the phone, late at night. Her father once questioned why she had started coming home hours later than usual, but Sonia offered vague excuses about extra classes and project work. The more her parents asked, the more defensive she became. In truth, Sonia was balancing two lives, the one her family saw, and the secret one she lived under Irfan's control. The turning point came when Sonia fainted in college during a lecture. Ritika rushed to her side, noticing fresh bruises on her arms. As she helped her up, Sonia refused to see the doctor, insisting she was fine. Ritika tried once again to push her into opening up, but Sonia shook her head with tears in her eyes. It was the look of someone too frightened to speak. Every sign pointed to the fact that Sonia was in danger, but no one around her knew just how deep the danger went. Ritika felt powerless. She wanted to help her friend, but Sonia's silence created a wall between them. What Ritika didn't know was that Irfan's hold over Sonia wasn't just emotional. It was physical, psychological, and terrifyingly unbreakable. His obsession was tightening like a noose, and Sonia was becoming more isolated by the day. The whispers of a Bhoot boyfriend were no longer funny. They were a chilling warning that Sonia's secret was consuming her, dragging her into a shadowy world from which escape seemed almost impossible. Inspector Karan Malhotra was no stranger to missing person cases, but when Sonia's family reported her disappearance, something about the case unsettled him immediately. Sonia had no history of running away, no disputes with her parents, no reason to vanish without a trace. Her phone records offered the first clue, showing dozens of late-night calls to a man named Irfan Veyra. That name stood out. It was not familiar to the family, not listed among her college friends, and not tied to any known workplace in the area. To Inspector Malhotra, it was a loose thread that demanded pulling. When he began looking into Irfan's background, what emerged was disturbing. Irfan had no stable job, no verifiable source of income, and moved often, never staying in one neighborhood for more than a year. His landlords described him as secretive, always paying rent in cash, and never welcoming visitors. He carried himself with quiet intensity, often glaring at anyone who looked his way. One landlord even mentioned how Irfan kept his windows shut at all times, and never allowed anyone to enter his room, not even for repairs. Digging further, the inspector uncovered records from another city where Irfan had once lived. There he had been connected to a violent altercation with neighbors. Even more unsettling, an ex-girlfriend of his had gone missing years earlier. Though there had never been enough evidence to charge him, suspicion had lingered. People in that neighborhood whispered about his temper, about how he would control the girl, isolating her from family and friends. Eventually she was gone, and Irfan left the city soon after. No one ever saw her again. The pattern was unmistakable. Irfan was not just secretive, he was dangerous. His life was littered with half-truths and shadows, and every relationship he had left behind carried the same trail of fear and silence. While the inspector gathered evidence, a witness came forward who made the picture even clearer. Maya Rauth, a woman who lived in the same building as Irfan in Nangloi, admitted she had seen Sonia several times. She described how Sonia would arrive late in the evenings, her face anxious, her movements hesitant, and how she often left in tears. Maya confessed that she sometimes heard muffled arguments through the walls, followed by silence that lasted for hours. On more than one occasion she believed she heard someone screaming, though she never dared to confront Irfan. Maya also described Irfan himself. She called him a man who seemed haunted, as if he lived with ghosts no one else could see. He rarely greeted neighbors, never engaged in small talk, and spent long hours alone in his room. Sometimes she saw him pacing the corridor at night, muttering to himself. What terrified her most was how he treated Sonia, not like a girlfriend, but like a possession he refused to let go of. Inspector Malhotra began piecing the information together. Sonia's sudden withdrawal from her friends, the bruises noticed by Ritika, the secrecy, and now the testimony of Maya, all pointed to one chilling conclusion. Sonia had been trapped in a dangerous relationship with a man whose obsession blurred the line between love and madness. The investigation also revealed Irfan's fascination with the occult. In his old neighborhood, people recalled him visiting deserted shrines, collecting strange objects, and speaking about spirits as though they were real companions. He had an unhealthy belief that women in his life were bound to him not just physically, but spiritually. This belief fueled his obsession, and gave rise to the terrifying nickname people unknowingly gave him, the Bhoot Boyfriend. By now the inspector knew Sonia's life was in grave danger. Irfan's past showed a pattern of control and disappearance, and Sonia was following the same path as the women before her. The challenge was finding her before she completely vanished. Every lead suggested that Irfan was capable of going to extreme lengths to ensure Sonia never escaped him. The longer the investigation stretched, the clearer it became that Irfan was not hiding Sonia out of love. He was preparing to make her a permanent part of his twisted world. The case was no longer about a missing girl. It was about a predator who believed possession was stronger than life itself, and who had already proved in his past that those who entered his world rarely came back alive. Days after Sonia's disappearance, Inspector Karan Malhotra and his team searched Irfan Veyra's rented room in Nangloi, hoping to find even the smallest clue. What they discovered inside was far beyond what they had imagined. The room was dark, curtains tightly drawn even though it was daytime. The air felt heavy, carrying a smell of incense mixed with decay. On the walls were strange markings, uneven circles and symbols scrawled in red ink. In between the drawings were crude sketches of Sonia's face, repeated over and over, some of them distorted, as if Irfan had drawn them in fits of rage. It was a disturbing sight that revealed just how deep his obsession had gone. In one corner of the room, the police found a large trunk. Inside were personal belongings that clearly belonged to Sonia, her dupatta, her college notebooks, pens marked with her name, and strands of her hair tied together with thread. There was even a pair of earrings her mother had gifted her on her last birthday. Each item had been kept carefully, almost like trophies or offerings. To the investigators, this wasn't just evidence. It was a shrine built by a man who saw Sonia as an object to be owned forever. The neighbors who gathered outside whispered among themselves as the police carried out the evidence. Maya Rauth, who had earlier spoken of screams and arguments, confirmed that Sonia had been seen there many times. She added that on the night Sonia went missing, She had heard loud noises from Irfan's room, followed by an eerie silence that lasted until morning. She had wanted to knock on his door, but fear had held her back. That fear now seemed justified. The investigation deepened, and soon Irfan was tracked down and taken into custody. During questioning, his behavior was erratic. At times he claimed Sonia was alive and staying with him willingly. At other times he spoke as though she had already died but was still with him in spirit. He laughed, cried, and even whispered to empty corners of the interrogation room, as though someone unseen was there with him. The police realized they were dealing with a man whose mind had slipped far from reality. Irfan eventually confessed that he had taken Sonia to a deserted farmhouse on the outskirts of the city. According to him, it was a place where they could be alone, away from the judgment of society. He spoke about the farmhouse like it was a temple, a sacred space where Sonia would be his forever. He insisted that Sonia was not harmed, that she was with him, but his words were inconsistent, shifting every time he was pressed for detail. Sometimes he said she was alive and waiting. Other times he said she had transformed into his boot and never left his side. When the police searched the farmhouse, the horror became undeniable. The building was old, abandoned for years, with broken windows and weeds growing through the cracks. Inside they found a single locked room. The smell that leaked from the door was unmistakable, heavy and suffocating. When they forced it open, the sight inside froze everyone in place. Sonia's body lay in the room, surrounded by candles that had burned down to their ends. Pieces of paper with chants and strange writings were scattered across the floor. Around her body were Irfan's belongings placed carefully, almost like offerings in a ritual. It was clear Sonia had tried to resist. Marks on the walls showed she had struggled to escape. The bruises on her wrists and neck told the story of her final moments. Irfan had not taken her to the farmhouse to love her. He had taken her there to trap her permanently, believing that if she could not be his in life, she would remain his in death. The discovery shocked not only her family but the entire community. The whispers of a boot boyfriend had transformed into a grim reality no one could laugh about. Sonia had become the victim of an obsession so consuming that it blurred the lines between love, control, and madness. The farmhouse, once a forgotten ruin, was now a crime scene that revealed the depths of Irfan's darkness. The case that had begun as a missing persons report had now turned into one of the most horrifying crimes the area had ever seen. For Inspector Malhotra, it was no longer just about finding Sonia. It was about understanding the terrifying mind of a man who believed possession was eternal, and who had turned a young woman's life into a nightmare that ended behind locked doors and burning candles. The farmhouse discovery marked the end of the search for Sonia Nangloi, but it was only the beginning of uncovering the terrifying depths of Irfan Veyra's mind. After his arrest, the courtroom became the stage for one of the most chilling trials the city had ever witnessed. From the very first hearing, Irfan refused to behave like a normal accused. He sat in silence for long stretches, staring at the floor, then suddenly erupted in laughter, muttering to himself as if Sonia were seated beside him. His eyes often wandered to empty corners of the room, and he would nod, smile, and even whisper, as though holding private conversations with someone no one else could see. The prosecution built a strong case. Photographs of Sonia's belongings from Irfan's room, the obsessive notes, the strands of hair, and most damning of all, the scene inside the farmhouse, painted a clear picture of obsession turned deadly. Witnesses like Maya Rauth testified about the screams, the late-night visits, and the way Sonia seemed afraid every time she left Irfan's place. Ritika Deshmukh, broken with grief, stood before the court and recounted the bruises, the secrecy, and the way Sonia had slowly disappeared from her life. Each testimony chipped away at the facade of Irfan's claim that their relationship was voluntary, but Irfan clung to his delusion. He told the judge that Sonia was not dead. He insisted that she still visit him every night, that she sat with him in his cell, smiled at him, and told him that they would never be separated. He refused to acknowledge the photographs of her lifeless body. He called them lies, claiming the police had staged everything to tear them apart. His words chilled everyone in the courtroom. It was not just denial. It was a mind consumed by a fantasy, where Sonia could never escape his grip. Forensic experts testified about the marks on Sonia's body and the evidence of restraint. They explained how she had been kept alive for days before her death, held against her will, and how the writings around her body suggested ritualistic obsession. Every piece of evidence revealed Irfan's desire to merge reality with his twisted belief. He had not simply killed Sonia,
He had tried to create a world where her spirit belonged to him, where her body was just a vessel for his obsession. The trial attracted widespread attention. Newspapers called it the Bhoot Boyfriend case, and television anchors debated endlessly about whether Irfan was insane or simply evil. For Sonia's family, there was no comfort in these discussions. They had lost their daughter in the most horrifying way, and now they had to sit in the same room as the man who had destroyed her. Her mother fainted during one hearing when Irfan turned to the family and smiled, whispering that Sonia was standing behind. As weeks turned into months, the verdict became inevitable. The judge declared Irfan guilty of abduction, murder, and desecration. His sentencing was harsh, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Yet even when the sentence was read, Irfan showed no remorse. Instead, he laughed softly, turned his head toward the empty seat beside him, and whispered something as though sharing a private joke with Sonia. Inside prison, his delusions only grew stronger. Guards reported that he often sat awake all night, speaking to himself, sometimes singing softly, sometimes crying. He refused to eat unless he believed Sonia had approved the food. He scratched her name into the walls of his cell until his fingers bled. To him, prison was not a punishment. It was simply another room where his boot girlfriend visited him every night. For the people of Nangloi, the case became a lasting reminder of how hidden secrets can turn fatal, how love warped into obsession becomes a weapon, and how danger can exist behind the most ordinary face. Sonia's story was retold in hushed voices across the city, a tale of innocence destroyed by the darkness of one man's madness. The horrifying case of Sonia Nangloi and her secret boot boyfriend was not just about a crime. It was about the frightening power of obsession, the fragility of trust, and the chilling truth that sometimes the ghosts we fear are not supernatural. They are human beings who live among us, wearing the mask of love until it is far too late to escape.